Welcome back to the Chattervast podcast. I'm your host, Chad. Thanks for joining me. Sorry for keeping you waiting. I had quite a few starts here. Actually, I started the live stream, and hopefully you can hear me. I'm trying to knock this volume down. I'm getting used to OBS and everything going on here. So I had a few starts with the live stream. I started talking at the camera like somebody was listening, and nobody was. I realized that in OBS you have to click start, and then you have to click start in YouTube, which is not something I'm used to. I'm used to streaming just like music or something like that, and you just hit start and it goes regardless. Anyways, so this was a scheduled stream for like 12 minutes ago, but we started a little bit late, so I'm going to get right to it. This is all about the election, which happened about a week ago, so I'm going to just have to repeat everything, but bear with me, you haven't heard it before. So what happened a week ago is obviously we had the election, and since then we have had a back and forth, he said, she said, there's fraud, there isn't, and all that jazz has been happening. So I just want to quickly recap where I've gotten to in the conversation is, if you know me, and you've listened to my podcast at all, or you've seen Escape News with my friend Ryan, which is, quite an interesting Escape News. You should definitely check it out. It's a lot of fun. We talked about nuclear stuff. We talked about, what was our first one about? I don't even remember at the moment. But we're going to be talking about something about space this week. So you should check that out. Anyways, I'm not one to hold to conspiracy theories. Little green men in Arizona, at Area 51, or wherever it is, Nevada. I don't think they're there. I don't think there are Nazis in Antarctica that we're fighting. And if you don't know about that story, you should go look it up, the Antarctica story. It's very interesting. If you're watching right now with me, jump into the chat, say hello. I'd love to chat with you and talk about things. Sorry for the late start. Hopefully that didn't deter anybody. Anyways, so going on, what we're going to be talking about is a couple of things that I found on Parler. And if you know what I think about Parler, it's the Fox News comment section on an article. It's interesting jumping around between Twitterverse and Reddit and seeing all the different reactions. Facebook, every culture and ecosystem in the social media universe is its own thing. It's its own wild jungle. So anyways, on Parler, I saw quite a few things that we're going to talk about tonight. This won't be a very long podcast, but we're going to talk about also Tucker Carlson and some of the things that have happened up to this point. So with Tucker Carlson, he came out, and this was just yesterday, and posted this video on YouTube and, of course, on Fox News, just admitting, they messed up, like Fox News messed up, and a lot of people on Parler were very mad, and I keep pointing down here because this is where my phone is. I'm looking at it because there's Parler, and it's very interesting. And he saw, and Fox News, and a lot of people were very mad at Fox News for declaring Trump the winner right off the bat. Not Trump, Biden the winner right at the beginning. It was fairly early on, really, really close to the beginning. And he came out and just said, hey, you're not going to hear the audio. I'm going to just play the video in the background. But he said that, we need to be fair, balanced, clear, honest, and what we know so far, we're going to go from that. We're going to not do everything that we, say on conjecture, which, mainstream media, they have polling, statistics, data, different things like that, and to project out who's going to win, they have some data to back it up. That makes sense. But obviously, people weren't happy about that because there have been, a back and forth on the whole election fraud issue. And like I said before, I'm not one to jump into conspiracy theories, so I'm not one to say that there's been election fraud. I don't really want to believe that people come into it with ill intentions, bad motivations. I know that happens. I'm not gullible and just denying that there's there's wrongdoing in the world or anything like that. But I want to believe, at least with our democratic process, and I think most Americans do, that it was taken and done in a good way, and that we can trust the results of it. So I don't think most of the people who are upset about Trump losing are just because they think that he shouldn't have lost and it should just be Trump and Biden should just lose regardless. I think people don't trust the democratic process right now. And Fox News was, finally owning up to that, and Tucker Carlson in this, and that hopefully will put some ease in the minds of those who are, watching the election. But if you watched my podcast the other day, I pointed out a simple problem that I had. I had looked into Melanie Hartman, person that showed up on Parler that some votes were given to her, and they were supposed to be for the Republican candidate. And there was a glitch in the system. They called it out, fixed it, whatever. She lost. and it went to the Republican candidate, and this was in Michigan. And so I want to know, is this real? Because you can't trust everything you see on the internet, you know that? And I found several other cases where, you look up into the story of a person and whether or not they even exist, and sometimes you'll be surprised at what information is completely falsified. So I looked this lady up, Twitter handle, and found her, and her first few tweets were sensitive information. You couldn't see them. So I dug around in my Twitter app, tried to figure out what is going on, how do I view this information, and found out that I had to log in on my computer to see what was going on. And that was kind of annoying because I wanted to be able to do it from my app. I didn't want to log on to my computer. Anyways, going on with the story, hopefully my bitrate isn't, my YouTube is telling my bitrate is lower than recommended. So hopefully the stream isn't too jumpy for you. It says it's a good connection right now, but we'll have to get that up in the future. Anyways, back with the Twitter story is what happened. I finally got the information viewable, and it was just her admitting what happened. Basically just saying, yeah, I won, and then we found out there was actually glitch in the system. The votes should have gone to the Republican candidate, so that's what's happening. And that is the moment where, in the movies where like the scene drops out and it zooms into the face, and I just felt that like, oh man, it's real. Like there's problems and people are hiding them. And I knew that there were problems. There were definitely glitches. I mean, they're computers. I work on computers. There's always problems with stuff like that. But when I realized at that moment that there were problems and people were hiding them intentionally, I had a double take. First off, I wanted to start off with, well, maybe Twitter is trying to hide this information about problems with the election process because if people find it, they're going to be mad and then there's going to be riots. Maybe they're just trying to prevent it like that. But realistically, with the amount of problems that I'm coming across, not just on Parler and not just on Reddit or Twitter or whatever, it seems obvious. The obvious scenario is that they don't want people to know this kind of stuff. So my podcast the other day, just less than a minute, Control the Narrative, I think I put the thumbnail as, discusses that you cannot have an election that people trust in when people are not being open and honest and transparent about things. You need to be transparent about these things, not because we just want people to be angry about things and they didn't get their way, whether it be Trump winning in 2016 or Biden winning this year or whatever it might be. You want that open and transparent part of our election process to move the democratic process forward. What I mean by that is you want people to continue to trust it, to continue to use it, so that it continues to exist. If you don't have an open and transparent and fair democratic process and people are doubting in it, you have problems and you will have problems going forward. So going into another part of that conversation that I was just having with my neighbor tonight, and excuse me, I just need to take a drink. So we were talking, and he's similar in the way that I think. I'm not like 100% like, ooh, Trump, like, I see flaws in it, but like at least most of the platform there I agree with, and most of Biden's platform I don't agree with. But he was saying, and I was saying with him, that there's a split in our country, and there's no conversation being had across the way. You really need to have a conversation with people you don't agree with. That's how you open, progress your mind, and make progress with things, because you have different ideas presented. Now, if those ideas are wrong or completely like you oppose them, of course that can come out in that process, and that is okay for that to happen. So where I'm taking this story is it's very hard as a human, like I was telling I'm going to pause this back in there, it's annoying me. As I was telling my neighbor, it's very hard as a human to watch, listen, or read stuff you don't agree with. It's part of that whole confirmation bias kind of stuff that goes on in the mind. It is very difficult for you as an individual to listen to something you don't agree with. And what happens, I listened to a psychologist who was talking about this. The first time that you present information that somebody doesn't agree with, that's against their worldview, they just kind of mark you mentally as an ignorant person. But if you press that information on them again, and you try to keep feeding it to them, they now in their brain immediately mark you as ignorant, stupid person. It's just a natural human thing that information that doesn't already agree with what we have going on in our head is information that we'll push out to the side, and the people that are presenting that information. So I went intentionally and found some videos about Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. And yes, I don't agree with her on some stuff. I would say that there were some things that when I was listening to her, she was talking about Green New Deal and world stuff. And I talk about this because it is important that we find the things that we do agree on across the whole country and solve the problems that we agree on that we need to find a solution for. Now, obviously, when the method comes out and how to solve that problem, that's going to look different. Obviously, we need to put our heads together, but as long as we understand, hey, we're on the same page on this is the problem, we need to solve it. And one of the particular things was Ryan and I had just talked about nuclear power. And I'm not a person who's like climate change. Now, I'll be very open and honest about this. I'm Christian. I have Christian background. So, but I'm not one of those people that they paint the picture of, oh, climate change is completely unreal, it's all fake news or whatever. I believe that there are things that we have to do to take care of the world that we have. And we do influence things. We definitely do dump plastic. No, interesting thing, glitter is, I'm really bad at rabbit trails. So if you listen to me, you're going to just hit all kinds of interesting topics. But glitter is actually bought, the largest buyer of glitter in the world is the boat industry, and they paint it so their boats, use it in the paint so the boats look all sparkly and nice, but that actually leads to tons of plastic waste into the ocean and into fish. So I think that's a problem, and I think, yeah, we're harming our own environment, and we're doing things that obviously it's going to affect us in the end. Too much hot weather, too much cold weather, putting stuff in pesticides or whatever, like, yeah, but I'm not like out there hugging trees. So if we can come together, Ocasio-Cortez and people like me, and just say, hey, like, yeah, we need to take care of the resources that we have and do better with it. I'm not really sure where she stands on nuclear power, but I'm seeing a large amount of people come to the conclusion that, hey, nuclear power is dangerous when things go wrong, but if we do the correct processes, we should be using this as a fuel source rather than wasting all of our money like trying to do solar panels and wind power and all this stuff. Like, per amount of power that it does and the safety rating there, you can go listen to Escape News with Ryan and I. Like, it's just the best solution right now. There's no better solution to it. But because of the stigmas from, past decades, people don't want to use it. Anyways, but that presents the point that we need to come together on things that we agree on. That, hey, we need to not just be burning all of our fossil fuels, and whatever reason you might have for that, like whether or not you think fossil fuels are bad to burn for the atmosphere and for human lungs, or you say, hey, we're going to run out of this, or like cost effectiveness, it doesn't matter. The same problem comes back to, like, we consume energy, and we need to find a better way to consume better energy that's cleaner and safer. And it's just a given that nuclear energy is that way. So I think that's a conversation that we need to be having, something like that. Now, when we discuss other things, obviously being Christian, or like say you're Republican, well, I can't say like all Republicans believe this, but like people like me, pro-life and anti-abortion, or you are generally not in, I don't want to get into everything, but like say that's a hot topic right now. That kind of issue is definitely going to be a hard thing to deal with. But I think we can deal with those conversations after we start with the ones we already agree on. I'm not saying that we're all going to end up happy and joyful in the end and we're all going to get our way and we're all going to work together. I'm just saying we need to stop the divide in the country. So there's a conversation that I have with several people occasionally about we need a conservative media, social media platform. And yes, that would be kind of nice, I guess, but Parler is kind of like that, and I can't say that I really like the echo chamber effect. I want to be presented with some other ideas to push my thoughts, just so I can know it helps you know what you believe, and also think through some other things. So, getting back to the social media platform, it's bad, I think, in the long run. Yes, do I like Jack Dorsey and Facebook censoring information and believe that and all stuff? Like, yeah, I think they do that, and I don't like it, but at the same time, I would say that they own the business, they made it, so they get to do what they want with it. Now, obviously, getting to Section 230 and all kinds of stuff, it gets convoluted when you try to get the law involved, but I don't think it's good to be just splitting the environment. Also, I don't think it's helpful that they're censoring, because you're creating the same type of thing. You're creating pools of people with different thoughts who aren't talking to each other anymore. And so you're not making progress on anything. It's like trying to solve any problem and putting people in separate buildings, having separate conversations, and then they come together and fight about how they're going to get something done because they don't realize they're trying to solve the same problem sometimes. So, does America as a whole like racism, systemic racism, or whatever they might call it? I would say, yeah, there's probably some people out there who are racist and don't like whatever. You can name any color. Black, white, or yellow, or red, or whatever color. There's people who don't like other people. That's just a given. Now, are you going to change those people's minds? I don't know. That's not what we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on ways to handle things together. Now, I'm not one to fall in, I don't really agree with the approach BLM takes with things, and I definitely don't agree with another approach of completely separating yourself from that. I think there needs to be a conversation. Now, this is another interesting point that I have an opinion on this regarding the whole conversation with Black Lives Matter and racism. And I think what is going on here, this is my own thought, and most of these are my own thought. Anyway, there's a problem with the conversation about what to do about systemic racism or whatever label you give it. And I think the reason that you see a lot of people not wanting to have the conversation, and immediately, so if you approach people in my circles, most of the time they'll throw up do you see the black on black crime, or do you see the amount of white people that get antagonized by police officers? And they don't want to have the conversation because I think the far left or alt left, or even, slightly off center left side, the language that is coming from there is mostly there's a particular word for it. It's the repayment kind of language where you owe us something. And if you follow their thoughts on it, they mostly say strip all these people who fit a certain mindset and a stereotype and a look of all of their wealth and assets and give it to these people that are the victims and the people that are hurt and us or whatever. And I think that is why you have a lot of people over in this column who yes, I'm not racist and I think it's bad that people are doing these things, but I don't want to have a conversation with somebody who just thinks the solution is to take everything I have and everything I worked for, whether or not they believe that I worked for it or deserve it. I don't think these people want to have a conversation with somebody who just wants to take all their stuff away. I don't think anybody would want to have a conversation that way. So you need to have people sit down and come up with better solutions than that. I don't think you're going to be able to run around like social justice warriors and just change everybody's mind. That's not going to work. Yes, there's just going to be racists in the future. That's how humans are. And obviously from a Christian perspective, I'm starting from that. I believe man's sinful and there's problems in human heart. If you're trying to solve the issue without Christianity, I'm not really sure what solutions you'd end up coming up with in the long run. But I think regardless of whether or not you're a Christian or whatever you believe, you need to start with things that you agree that are problems and then come up with solutions and start talking about solutions that everybody can agree on. And I would want to say that's what's going on, but I don't see it. I see people having conversations in separate pockets in those separate buildings all over America and all over the world, having these completely different dialogues of what is going on. Because I go through YouTube and I go through Reddit and I go through Twitter and occasionally on Facebook and Parler, of course. And I go and watch and listen to stuff that I don't agree with. And it's very interesting that the rhetoric that I hear a lot from the right Republican-leaning side or conservative side is that Facebook censors all these people and they hate us or whatever. But then I go into some of the aspects of the left or alt-left or whatever it might be, and they say that Facebook censors them. So I think the same things are going on. I don't know exactly what Facebook's algorithm is to censor things, but there are similar sentiments. So I think maybe those people can come together. Now, obviously, if you're a terrorist, there's probably not going to be room for you at the table for the conversation. Just like in Parler, you're not allowed to promote terrorism or be a terrorist, and that's generally a thing that I think most people in the U.S., I think most of the world, there are probably some places where people are okay with terrorism, or there are some people who are okay with it because terrorism exists. But I think we need to come together on problems that we agree with, and you need to have the conversation across the aisle. Now that's a problem because you do have Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and people out there censoring things, and then you also have the problem of the algorithms because the computers are just trained to give us more of what we want, and that's just, the way they're programmed. They want more viewers on YouTube. They want you to watch longer, so they're going to just feed you more of what you want. And it's really interesting. I saw a study about this years ago where you watch YouTube enough and you click on a couple things, it will take you just further and further down a rabbit hole of like conspiracyism or like alt-right or alt-left or something like that. I don't know that the algorithm works that drastically nowadays, but it will feed you stuff that's in your ecosystem. Once you go into YouTube and you create an account or Facebook or Twitter and you mark a few things that you like, it's just going to feed you that stuff, and it's going to feed you more of that stuff. So yes, it's very hard to break out of it and listen to things. First off, it's annoying to listen to things you don't agree with. Like, it's very, very hard on your brain. And second off, it's very hard to like get out of a system. But I think it's good. Now, obviously, you can take this today and start with talk to your neighbors and know the people that are around you. I think that's a really good place to start, because like the only change that you can see in America and anywhere in the world is going to be long-term with the people around you in your community. It's really more about the people that you know, with your family and with the people around you. You need to have a conversation. So anyways, I think I ranted and rambled on about that enough. I want to go back to a couple things here that I saw on Parler before we ended this stream. Real Clear Politics is one of the places that has, stats, politics, whatever it's called, numbers. They have numbers about stuff, and they have numbers about who's winning the election or not. And there we go, just updated again. Cool. So one thing that I saw in Parler was they took Arizona away from Biden. And I clearly remember Arizona being like, not just projected, but like Biden wins Arizona. I remember that being out there somewhere. I hadn't been on this website, but I'm pretty certain I'd seen it on this next website. Anyways, I saw that, so then I went over to CNN, and sure enough, Biden is not winning Arizona at the moment. Now, it's close. It's not close enough for Trump to win it, but if you see on my screen, there's 98% reporting in, and the vote difference right here is 13,000 votes-ish. That's not a lot of votes. With 2% left to count, that could make up the difference. And I'd also seen shortly after that on Parler that Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin had come up as being taken away, like from him clearly winning it. It's more just projected, and they're retracting some of that information, which goes along with what Fox News is saying. Like, they can't just like run around just like, tell you exactly who's going to win. But Georgia was also another one I think that came up. But there's some larger discrepancies in the Michigan and Michigan count. But anyways, I thought this was really interesting because it goes back to everything I've just been talking about Twitter, like hiding information, and now I'm just like jumping down conspiracy level stuff. Like, at this point, the way that everything says, the way that everything the mainstream media is saying it, is that Joe Biden won. And if you follow this through, from what I've heard, when people figure out that Trump actually won, if that happens after legal proceedings and such, there will be massive backlash, because I just saw a poll today, which obviously you can take polls somewhat. 79% or 76% of Americans believe that Biden has won the election. And I mean, if 2000 says anything about Al Gore thinking he won for 36 days, I don't remember there being violent protests back then, but after 2016, I think there's going to be some problems if that really happens to be the case. I want to talk about this just because this plays into everything I've been saying about we need to have a conversation. Twitter hiding information that's just essential to fixing the problems that we have in our system is not helping. They need to say, hey, look, this is not sensitive information. This is just fact. We had a glitch, and we have to fix it. And the fact that they're hiding it or putting it behind just a simple thing like that tells me that maybe they aren't in good faith. And now I'm headed down like all kinds of conspiracy, crazy stuff, and I didn't want to be there, but I feel like I'm being pushed there now at this point. It's really hard to, be in a country that I want to respect the democratic process. I want to believe that everything is going well. And I'm sure that anybody who would listen to me, I think, would want the same, that you'd want to have dialogue and that you'd want to know what's going on. Anyways, all that to say, have a conversation with somebody. You know what? talk to somebody. Like, that's really what it comes down to. You just need to be talking with people that you don't even agree with, because you need to have that conversation. It's healthy for humanity. And maybe it would, keep people, a little bit more working together. Our country actually united. Which I had mentioned to my neighbor, and I think I mentioned the other podcast earlier today, was just, I'm afraid. Like, not afraid in, like, I'm actually shaking, but, like, more concerned, I guess would be the word, that if it comes down to Trump actually winning, I want him to win because I voted for him, but at the same time, I kind of am concerned because of what that will do to our country. I looked up, I did some research, and found that in 2016 there were lots of violent protests. I mean, especially in the West Coast. Not so much here. I don't remember anything happening here, and I wasn't living in this, I was living in this area. What am I talking about? I don't remember anything happening here, but I am in South Carolina, so not much happens here, actually. But, and then looking at the violent protests that happened this week after Biden was projected, or actually was declared president-elect, I didn't see anything violent protest, and that leads me to believe that there will be consequences to showing people that there are flaws in our system and rectifying that system, because it will be against what they already believe and know. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I hope all of my audio came through and everything was working well. We'll try and do it all again another time, but thanks for sticking with me. Please like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate it. If you can support me on Patreon, that's great. And we will see you guys next time. Let's see if we can get this thing queued up for... And... Oh, here we go. Play some music. Queuing up outro. There you go. See you guys next time.